back and saying, what do we want the police to do? What is their mission? What is their rules of engagement? How do we have outside oversight of this? About a month ago, Frank Serpico wrote an article for Politico, and he was talking about the epidemic of police violence. And he went back and put it in the context of when he was a police officer, and he ends the article with 6 things that he thinks need to be done. That's the kind of thinking that we need. We need people looking at this and saying, here's how the system is broken. Here's what we need to do to fix it. We need to have a corrected mission statement to start with. But the protesters aren't asking for any of that. They're saying, for minor violations of the law, like throwing water bottles, we don't want you to respond with anything. And then the next one has something to do with tasers or whatever. They're coming up with that kind of stuff. They need to be setting concrete rules of engagement for everyday life. That's the problem. And they're not looking at the problem from enough of a distance. They're too caught up in the moment, too caught up in what's going on, whether it's Darren Wilson or whether it's Michael Brown.
Right, and it's very ambiguous for an officer to say, I felt threatened, and then so I emptied my clip. I mean, what does that mean? Was a person 200 yards away? Were they right there? Did they hit you? Or did they, turn around and then you felt like they looked at you and you got scared?
Well, we're waiting for this to happen. I pulled out these 6 points, and they're very brief. Let me go down the 6 points that Frank Serpico said. Number 1, strengthen the selection process and psychological screening process for police recruits. Police departments, he says, are simply a microcosm of the greater society. If your screening standards encourage corrupt and forceful tendencies, you'll end up with a larger concentration of these types of individuals. He said, number 2, provide ongoing examples of training and simulation, not only telling people, but showing police officers how they're expected to behave and react critically. Here's a third one. I think this is key. Require community involvement from police officers so they know the districts and the individuals they're policing. I can't stress this enough. This is the key thing. We were just talking about how police have changed in our lifetime. I remember spending a good deal of time in London with my wife, and the police, I could not believe how nice the police were there. They would patrol, 2 of them together. They did not have weapons, and they would walk on foot. They knew the people in their area. They were actually walking a beat. They were part of a community. You didn't feel like you were going to get tasered if you walked up to them and asked them for directions somewhere. We frequently did. I would never have done that, even in 1980, to the police here in this country. They were part of the community. When we went back 20 years later, the police were predominantly not walking the beat. They were driving a car, and they were armed, and they looked and acted like the police in this country. They need to have community involvement. And so what Serpico is saying, require community involvement. Have them get involved in the community, even if it's not practical in some places for them to walk a beat. Have them get involved in the community. 4, enforce the laws against everyone, including police officers. He said, when police officers do wrong, use those individuals as examples of what not to do. Because, if you don't do that, then basically everybody sees that it's okay for them to continue to do so. He says, so that others know that kind of behavior will not be tolerated. Tell the police unions, that's a big part of the problem, and detective endowment associations that they need to keep their noses out of the justice system. Number 5, support the good guys. Honest cops who tell the truth and behave in exemplary fashion should be honored, promoted, and held up as strong positive examples of what it means to be a cop. Remember when we had that cop up in Buffalo, I think it was, as part of the TSA opt-out and film protest about a year ago. I think his name was Officer Lennox or something like that. Anyway, when he stood up for those people against the airport manager who said, just get them out of here, we held him up as an example. A lot of people talked about him as an example of the way a cop should behave. And so we do need to support the good guys. And here's the last one. Last but not least, police cannot police themselves. Develop independent boards that are permanent to review incidents of police corruption and brutality. Fund them well, support them publicly. Only this can change a culture that has existed since the beginnings of the modern police force. That is the most important thing. These protesters need to be pushing for some kind of an independent board that is going to stand there, independent of the police, because as we saw with this prosecutor here, he was not doing, in my opinion, an honest job. Nobody believed that this was an honest grand jury proceedings. This was really not a trial of Darren Wilson. This was a trial of Michael Brown. And I'll give you one example why I say that. It's very rare for a lawyer to allow his client, who is possibly going to get an indictment, to testify before the grand jury. Why? Because only the prosecutor is allowed in front of the grand jury to talk to them, not a judge, and certainly not the defense lawyer. So if Darren Wilson's lawyer is going to allow Darren Wilson to go in and talk to the prosecutor and the grand jury for 4 hours, essentially giving up his Miranda rights, everything that he says is on the record, can be used against him. He is under examination by the prosecutor, talking to them, if whether or not it was an examination, but he's talking to them for 4 hours. There's absolutely no way that lawyer would allow his client to do that unless he believed that there was absolutely no danger to his client, and that he was not under any threat of prosecution. If he didn't know that, it would be malpractice.
Right, and that's why a lot of the local residents and black leaders were saying that they wanted someone else to be the prosecutor on this case. Yes. They said he can't be impartial because his family, they have deep roots in the police. His father, mother, brother, uncle, and cousin all worked for the St. Louis Police Department, and his father was killed while responding to a call involving a black suspect.
Hey guys, I want to break in here real quick. It looks like we got a call from Dan Badandi, and there's a protest going on in Providence. So he's got a live stream going on right now of that. There apparently protesters have blocked the road off, and so protests are cropping up everywhere. We saw last night in La Brea, California, they were blocking off areas. They blocked off some bridges in New York.
Yes.
So this is kicking off a lot of stuff.
Right,
and also...
So this report that you're getting from Badandi, is that a peaceful protest?
So far, it looks like it is pretty peaceful. I haven't seen anything yet. He was blowing my phone up trying to get a hold of me, but it looks like there they are in the middle of the road, and they're sitting down now.
So this is Providence?
This is Highway 95.
Providence, Rhode Island.
Right.
Okay.
And also, we do have the firefighter who called in today. We have him on Skype, Ken Moran. If you guys want to ask him some questions about arsonists or things to look for, he's good to go right now if you guys want to.
Absolutely. Let's go to Ken right now.
All right.
Hello?
Hi, David.
Hi. Thank you for talking to us. I was very interested. I don't know if you saw the interview earlier, but we had a press conference with the Unified Command. They had the police commissioner and Ron Brown. I'm not sure what his exact title is there. Nevertheless, they were talking to them. One of the things that came up was that incident that you called in earlier today on the Alex Jones Show, and we're talking about what Joe Biggs and Jakari Jackson were filming last night, and that is the fact that this building, as it was burning, they were under fire. And they asked the police commissioner about that. Why didn't they come down there and give protection to the firemen? And then they asked him, isn't it standard procedure for the police to come down and secure that area as the fire department is moving in there or before they're moving in there? And he said, yeah, that's standard procedure, but they got there too quickly, and we decided that we basically didn't want to go down there. That's basically what he said. I'd like to get your reaction to that. I don't know if you saw that clip or not, that press conference.
I heard the loop of it, and it's laughable. The firefighters had no body armor, and they stood their ground and did the job. And the the police department had body armor, shields, armored vehicles, and other things that they could have rendered aid. Another really telling thing is, what about mutual aid? I don't know if there was one fire truck or two on that building, but the larger building was what we would call normally a mutual aid call. So, or a 3-station fire. In other words, we would tone out multiple stations to give us enough manpower and trucks to fight a fire of that size. There should have been at least one fire apparatus assigned to each side of the building at the minimum to keep enough 2.5-inch hose to fight that. And it seemed like this is something we do in pre-planning. There were no other cities. If you're expecting a riot, we would have contacted all the departments with which we have mutual aid, develop SOPs to protect the firefighter, even if it meant wearing body armor, and prepare and pre-plan the response as it was. And to me, that's a very questionable.
And they had 3 months. They had already had riots, several nights of riots back in August. They had nighttime curfews. They knew about all of this. They knew it was very likely to happen if they were going to have a non-indictment. And yet, as you said, there wasn't any pre-planning for any of this. There wasn't any coordination. They didn't bring people in from adjacent fire departments. They didn't send even enough fire trucks, let alone any protection.
Well, I'll give you an example from my personal experience that there was a fire one time that we called in 4 departments. Now, I asked to take incident command, and it was refused to me for more than 20 minutes until the building got away. To this day, I question if the officer in charge had not been requested to let it burn. When you see chaos in the fire department and its responses, that's a very telling thing, because we don't go to the bathroom without a plan.
Yeah.
We have years to get everything right and get the training. The other thing, David, I'd like to question is the burn pattern. We once chased a fire starter in the woods based on his fire burn pattern. He was lighting fires in the woods on the highway, and we were one fire behind him and called law enforcement to head him off at the pass.
Wow. With
these buildings, the way they were burning was not only questionable about the timing and how fast they could get that hot, but the pattern. When the nonviolent protest was prevented and they were forced to be frustrated enough to go to violence, the expected burn pattern in a riot would be as one pops off in the next building, and as this group of burners move, they would start fires. It would be kind of a very, not random, but somewhat proximal pattern of burns, fire started. And with that, I didn't see that with the coverage from last night.
You know, certainly if somebody, it's almost reminiscent of Building 7, you know, where the guy says, pull it. And of course, there were a lot of things involved with that. But if somebody wanted to get rid of a building, that would be the ideal time, the ideal way to do it, wouldn't it? To have arson set up with that, as the rest of the place, as there were legitimate destruction of businesses, as other things are being set on fire, to go ahead and torch that. So we've got somebody, hang on with us right now. We got somebody engaging Jakari. Stay right there with us. We'll get right back to you.
You a guester. I'm being respectful to people. You freaking sellout. You don't love black people. You don't love black people. You don't love. You called us terrorists. You didn't think I found that, didn't you? Yeah, you scared now, ain't you?
I ain't scared of you.
There we go. So
out here burning down the buildings, that ain't supposed to.
Oh, we charged.
Because Jakari's not burning down places, he's a sellout. There we go.
All right, then. The white boy you with said we charged.
I know.
Bring him here. Bring him here and tell him to call us that in our face.
He said the people burning down a building.
You freaking sellout.
Burning down the building.
You freaking sellout.
Burning down
Go there with the enemies. You freaking sellout.
Sellout. You get on my face. You came over here.
Nobody knows who to blame here.
Alex Jones. Tell Alex Jones to come here.
He said whoever.
He's seeing his boy here, so you can mingle around the people.
There you go. See, if you're not out there, a tough guy is going to burn down the people in the town. He's going to burn down black buildings. That's black businesses. That's what a tough guy does, right? If you don't do that, you're a sellout. If you try to peacefully make change, if you try to report the news, you're a sellout, according to this guy. That's the kind of thug behavior. Let's go back to this. It's still going on here. Do you want to go back to that? Or?
I mean, meanwhile, we're one of the only news organizations out there that is pointing out the difference between peaceful protesters who've been peacefully protesting, fighting for some equality, respect, some justice for the last 3 months, differentiating between them and the people that are burning down these buildings.
You work for a racist Alex Jones.
What this guy needs needs to look at that video from Rick Ross, where he's talking about how they use the media to keep the black community thinking that they're going to be successful if they act like thugs.
Right.
That's a great video that we played earlier today. I think we've got that queued up for later in the program. Let's go back to the firefighter that we have on the line. We'll keep monitoring that situation there with Jakari. Hopefully that doesn't that guy doesn't get violent. It looks like violence is the only thing that
this
guy
is what they
likes,
wanted, though.
So,
They want them fighting amongst themselves. Even we're out there trying to bring some truthful news to this situation. This
is what going back to the face of this guy angrily yelling at Jakari. This is what it looks like when you buy into this phony paradigm that we've been talking about, the black versus white. He can't see what's happening. He is so blinded by that narrative that they've fed him, the propaganda that they fed him, that he can't understand what they're doing to him. And he thinks it's a great thing to burn down his black neighbors' businesses, to put their life's work in ashes on the ground. That's what these people have essentially done. Let's go back to the firefighter. I'm sorry, we wanted to get that live. Are you there, Ken?
Yes, sir. No problem, David. But I'd like to punctuate what you just said. Some people don't realize